Hi everyone. This week in Level F, we're going to be covering lessons 61 through 64, and you'll need worksheets 49 through 52, the practice sheets for 2 sets of tangrams, the 4-in-1 ruler, a geoboard with rubber bands, the math card games book, and your multiplication and basic number cards deck. In lesson 61, we'll be reviewing isosceles right triangles and exploring the Pythagorean theorem again. There is a correction for this lesson on the corrections page, so if your book was printed before December 29th of 2017, please follow the link in the description to make that correction before you start your lesson. Okay, your warm-up is on practice sheet 4. Next, you'll give your child the tangrams, ruler, and worksheet. After your child finds the 3 different sized triangles, tell him or her that these are isosceles right triangles. Ask, why are they isosceles? And why are they right? Now remember that isosceles means that 2 sides and their angles are equal. And a right triangle, of course, has a 90-degree angle in it. Your child will be measuring in triangle units with the small triangle equaling 1 unit. Each figure created with the tangrams will be measured in triangles, so whether there's 2 triangles or 4 triangles or whatever, centimeters, millimeters, and inches. If you look at the figure, you will see a white triangle in the middle of that figure, and this is just empty space. It is formed by the tangram pieces on the outside. So sometimes that's confusing to people and they think that they need to find a triangle to fit in that spot, but it's not true. It's just an empty open space. After the in conclusion questions, you can play Old Main Squares game, which is P22 in the math card games book. Okay, in lesson 62, we will be finding the area of parallelograms. The warm-up for this lesson is the second half of the practice sheet 4, which you did for lesson 61. Remember that a parallelogram is a quadrilateral with 2 sets of parallel lines. So a rectangle is a parallelogram, but not all parallelograms are rectangles. When you ask your child to build the parallelogram with 4 same-sized triangles, make sure that they build the one like the first one in the lesson book, not the rectangle, because that's what they're going to change their parallelogram to. Physically moving the triangle to make the rectangle really drives home for kids and adults too, for that matter, the relationship between the 2 shapes and how you can find the area easily. So then we're going to move on to a little bit more abstract work here. You're going to draw another parallelogram and change it into a rectangle just with your pencil and paper, or the whiteboard marker and the whiteboard. This is a little bit more abstract compared to the tangram pieces, but it's a good middle step for the kids to realize that, oh, they can physically move it with the tangram pieces, and now they can actually physically draw it and change it. So it's a good step to include in here. And if you think you need to back up and do a little bit more work with physically moving the tangram pieces, you could do that as well. When your child is drawing the perpendicular lines that are needed on the worksheet, show him or her how to use one of the triangles, either the tangram or a drawing tool triangle, to provide that straight edge so that they can draw the perpendicular line well. Under the section, Finding the Heights in a Parallelogram, I found it helpful to draw the original drawing with regular pencil and then draw the 3 different height lines with a colored pencil or a pen or a marker, just so that it's easier to see what's going on and they don't get confused as to what the original shape was. Notice also how the height can be actually outside of the parallelogram. So you might want to point that out to your kids too, that it doesn't have to be inside the parallelogram. Once your child finishes the worksheet, you can ask the in conclusion questions and play Old Main Squares, P22 in the math card games book. All right, lesson 63 is a review lesson and a game day. So after your child completes worksheet either 51A or 51B, you can play square memory game, which is P21. Let's look at that review, and if your child has missed one of these questions, you can see what lesson you could go back to. Okay, if your child missed any of the oral questions, let's look at what lessons to review. So for question number 1, you could review lesson 16. For question number 2, you would review lessons 1 and 2. And for question number 3, you would review lesson 58. If they missed the write the answers question, if they missed the first one, review lesson 58. The second one, you could review lessons 16, 56, and 57. And the third one, you would review lesson 9. In the do the calculations question, review lessons 1 and 2 if they missed number 1. Review lesson 27 if they missed number 2. For number 3, you could review lesson 33. And for number 4, you could review lesson 34. In the match the square root questions, review lessons 58 and 59. The section where you have to draw squares on the right triangle, go ahead and review lesson 60. For the find the area of the parallelogram, review lesson 62. And notice that the shape that we're working with is that central ribbon type parallelogram that goes a little diagonally across that rectangle. It's not the exterior rectangle. The exterior rectangle is there so that they can know what the measurements are, but the actual area is just that ribbon strip in the center. In this fill in the table section, go ahead and review lesson 56. Okay, for lesson 64, there is a correction on both the lesson and the worksheet. So please look at the link for the corrections on the Right Start Math website if your book was printed before April 11th of 2018. For this lesson, we'll be finding the area using the geoboard and learning about Pick's theorem. The warm-ups are oral questions followed by the worksheet number 52. Tell your child to read the instructions on the worksheet and make the 5 figures on the geoboard. So let's go ahead and look at what that will look like and what we can do with the information.
Okay, so the book and worksheet instruct your child to go ahead and make 5 figures. And there's a few things that I wanted to point out here. Notice that the figures proceed from left to right, and they correspond to the chart on the worksheet from left to right. Okay, so this is the first one, second, third, fourth, fifth figure. Secondly, I want you to notice the comment on the right about muscles and memory. So let's go ahead, and we're on page 128. This is the first page for lesson 64. And we're looking at the diagram down a little bit more than halfway down the page. So I've gone ahead and made the figures for you, just like your student will do on the geoboard. And what they are instructed to do is to complete a chart. And there's an example of it to the right. So we're going to look at the first one, and we're going to say, okay, how many boundary pairs do we have? So we have 1, 2. Okay, 2 boundary pairs for number 1, and the area is 1 square unit. For the second figure, how many boundary pairs do we have? 1, 2, 3. We have 3 boundary pairs, and the area is 2 square units. For the next one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 boundary pairs. Notice how I'm touching the pairs. Okay, that will help your child to really internalize what's going on. So there's 4 boundary pairs, and there's 3 units. On the next one, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boundary pairs, and there's 4 units. And on the last one, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 boundary pairs, 4 units, and 1 interior peg. So that's the only one that has an interior peg so far. Okay, so based on the information that you just gathered from the geoboard, and actually I would do this after each individual figure on the geoboard, I would go ahead and have your student fill in the information on the chart. So when we had 1 square unit, we had 2 boundary pairs. We didn't have any inside pegs, so we can just ignore that. When we had 2 units, 2 square units, we had 3 boundary pairs. 3 square units had 4 boundary pairs. Then we had 4 square units and we had 5 boundary pairs. And then for that last figure, the square, we had, we still had 4 square units. We had 4 boundary pairs, but we had 1 inside peg. Let's turn the page in your lesson book, or I'm sorry, flip your lesson book over to page 129. So we're still on lesson 64. And we're going to look at the diagrams about halfway down. There's 3 geoboards. This is learning about Pick's theorem. Pick's theorem is a way to figure out the area of a figure. So what it says to do is to make a 2 by 3 rectangle, and then we're going to cover 1 boundary pair. So we're going to ignore those pegs and then figure out how many boundary pairs we have. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 boundary pairs and 2 interior pegs. So the way we could chart that is we could see that we had boundary pairs minus 1, remember the one that I covered up. So we had 4 boundary pairs. We had 2 inside pegs. 4 plus 2 equals 6, which we know the area was 6. Okay, but if we didn't know that the area was 6, we could figure it out by saying, okay, boundary pairs minus 1 is 4, plus the inside pegs is 2. 4 plus 2 is 6, therefore the area must be 6.
Okay, so after your child has worked through problems 6 through 8 and 9 and 10, go ahead and have your child complete the worksheet. Finish with the in conclusion questions and play Ring Around the Products, which is P32 in the Math Card Games book, and the video about it is available on the Right Start website. That's all for this week. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.